The sun beat down on the small village of Umola, illuminating the thatched roofs of the huts. In one of these huts, a young maiden named Amarachi lived a life of hardship. She was an orphan, forced to live with her aunt, Mrs. Nkechi, and her husband, as well as their two sons, Emeka and Chidi. Amarachi was a stunning beauty with a tall and slender figure that commanded attention. Her black ebony skin was smooth and radiant with her cute big eyes, sparkled with kindness. Her hair dark was always neatly braided, her curvish shape turned head whenever she went to. Despite her physical beauty, Amarachi's life was far from ease. Her aunt, Mrs. Nkechi, was a wicked woman who delighted in making Amarachi's life miserable. She was constantly finding fault with Amarachi, criticizing her for every little thing, and making her do all the household chores. Amarachi, why is the floor not swept? Mrs. Nkechi would most times complain. Amarachi, why is the food not cooked on time? She would complain. Amarachi would try to explain, to apologize, but Mrs. Nkechi would not listen. She would just shout and scream. On this particular morning, Amarachi was busy sweeping the compound when Mrs. Nkechi stormed out of the hut, her eyes blazing with anger. Amarachi, you lazy girl, why have you not finished with the sweeping? Do you think that you are a guest in this house? She queried. Amarachi tried to explain, but Mrs. Nkechi could not listen. She grabbed a stick and began to beat Amarachi, the blows raining down on her like a torrent of rain. Please, auntie, stop, Amarachi begged, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry, I'm finished sweeping now, she wept. But Mrs. Nkechi would not stop. She beat Amarachi until she was exhausted, then threw her out of the compound. Get out of my house, you lazy girl. Don't come back here until you have learned to do your work properly, Mrs. Amarachi shouted at the top of her voice. Amarachi stumbled out of the compound, tears streaming down her face. She sat on a rock outside, feeling sorry for herself. The neighbors next door, who had been watching the scene unfold, shook their heads in pity. That Nkechi is a wicked woman. She treats that poor girl like a slave, one of them said. We all know she maltreats Amarachi, but what can we do? Nkechi is a troublesome woman. No one dares to cross her, another neighbor replied. As Amarachi sat on the rock, crying, a luxurious car approached from a distance. King Ebenezer, the ruler of the land, was returning from a visit to the neighboring community of Amugo. He had spent the day discussing trade agreements and strengthening ties with the king of Amugo. The car drew closer to Amarachi. He noticed the young girl crying by the roadside. He wondered what could be wrong and instructed his driver to stop the car. All right, my king, the driver replied, bringing the car to a stop. Amarachi quickly got up, surprised by the sudden stop. She wiped her tears and adjusted her dress. King Ebenezer stepped out of the car, and Amarachi immediately dropped to her knees, greeting him with respect. Good morning, my king, she said. Good morning, my child. I saw you crying from afar. What is wrong? King Ebenezer asked. My auntie chased me out of the house, my king, Amarachi explained. Where is your aunt? King Ebenezer asked. Amarachi pointed to her auntie's hut, and the king accompanied her by two guards, and Amarachi walked towards the hut. One of the guards knocked on the bamboo door, and Mrs. Nkechi came out from the hut, was surprised to see the king. She bowed her head in greeting and asked, My king, why the visit to my home? I saw this young girl crying, and I asked what was wrong. She said you chased her out of the house. Yes, I did, my king, Nkechi reaffirmed. Why did you do that? My king, she is always disrespecting I and my husband. She has refused to learn a skill, like sewing clothes, Mrs. Nkechi lied. King Ebenezer turned to Amarachi and asked, Is that true? Amarachi stammered, unable to utter a word, because she knew her aunt was lying. Mrs. Nkechi interrupted Amarachi and pleaded with the king. Please, my king, take her to the palace. Let her make a good name for herself. You can employ her as a maid. King Ebenezer kept mute for a moment before responding. "All right." Mrs. Nkechi immediately rushed into the house and brought out Amarachi's bag, handing it to her. "Bye-bye," Mrs. Nkechi said, bidding Amarachi farewell. Amarachi bid her farewell too and followed the king to the palace. The king drove smoothly into the palace. It was parked in the garage. Guards stepped out of the car and opened the car door for the king Ebenezer, who emerged from the car. Amarachi, who was seated in the back seat, opened the back car door and stepped out of the car. The king led the way with Amarachi and the two guards following behind. They entered the palace and made their way to the sitting room. King Ebenezer was the first to enter the sitting room. He saw Queen Adaeze with her maids. The maids were busy attending to the queen's nail, but they immediately stopped and stooped to bow and greet the king. "Good afternoon, my king. How was your visit with King of Amogo community?" Queen Adaeze asked her husband. "It went well, my lolo." "How are you doing?" King Ebenezer asked. "I'm fine, my king," Queen Adaeze replied. Amarachi entered the sitting room and bowed to the queen, who shouted and stopped her from coming close. "Will you stay back? Who do you think you are?" Queen Adaeze shouted. Amarachi kindly stepped back to avoid problem. "Who is this?" Queen Adaeze asked her husband. "She is the new maid. She'll be working in the palace," King Ebenezer explained. Queen Adaeze stared at Amarachi from head to toe, then asked, "No way, my king. I'm the one who should bring a new maid. Why did you bring her here?" And the king explained that he had seen Amarachi crying on the road, and after investigating, he discovered that her aunt has chased her out of the house. Her aunt even pleaded with him to take Amarachi in as a maid. "What is her name, and who are her parents?" Queen Adaeze asked. "Her name is Amarachi," replied the king. "Yes, Amarachi. That is her name." "But who are her parents?" Queen Adaeze asked. "I don't know her parents." "Wait oh, you did not even care to inquire who her parents are. You brought in a strange girl to the palace. Don't you think she is evil?" Queen Adaeze asked. "But I met her auntie," King Ebenezer replied. "That is not important. The important thing is that you must know who her parents are." "My queen, my parents are late," Amarachi spoke up. Queen Adaeze turned to Amarachi and asked, "Who asked you to talk?" She continued angrily. Amarachi apologized, but Queen Adaeze continued to insult her. "Sorry for yourself, you dirty stinging thing," she said. The king had had enough of his wife's behavior. "Woman, I said stop. Said you should stop. For once, be kind," he thundered and stormed out of the room. As soon as King Ebenezer stormed out of the room, Amarachi stood at a corner holding her bags and looking confused. Queen Adaeze turned to her and shouted, "Get out of my sight!" Amarachi quickly walked away, feeling embarrassed and humiliated. As she walked down to the corridor, she saw a maid and excused her. "Please, I'm a new maid. I'm looking for my room." "Okay, follow me," the maid replied. She led Amarachi to the boys' quarter, where the guards and maids slept. Amarachi entered the small room and dropped her bag on the ground. The maid introduced herself as Oluchi, and Amarachi did the same. "This is my room, and we are three maids sleeping here," Oluchi replied. "Okay, so you have been assigned a job to do?" "No, I haven't," Amarachi replied. "But why haven't you been assigned a job yet?" Oluchi asked. Amarachi explained that the queen had shouted at her, and Oluchi felt pity on her. "That is how the queen is. She's harsh, but don't worry. Later, go see her when she's at the garden or sitting room, not her room. Then ask her what your duty will be." "Thank you so much," Amarachi thanked Oluchi. "You are welcome. I would like to freshen up now," Amarachi replied. "Okay, let me leave," Oluchi said. "Before you leave, please show me the bathroom," Amarachi pleaded. "It is over there," Oluchi pointed out to the bathroom, which was located to the left side of the room. Amarachi thanked her again, and Oluchi left the room. After Amarachi finished bathing and changing into a dress, she made her way into the sitting room. She saw Queen Adaeze seated with her maids, busy dressing her hair. Amarachi approached the queen, who looked up at her with a scroll. Why didn't you wear the corporate uniform for the maid? I apologize, my queen. I haven't been given a duty yet, and I wasn't provided with a uniform, Amarachi pleaded. The queen's face remained stern. You will be in charge of tidying up the rooms and everywhere in the palace, she assigned. Amarachi bowed her head and replied, Okay, my queen. She turned and left the sitting room. As soon as Amarachi left, Queen Adeze turned to the maid. You are not getting the hairstyle I wanted. What is wrong with you? Can't you see I am not satisfied with it? The maid trembled and apologized again. I will try again, my queen. Queen Adeze's face turned stern. See that you do that. I'm holding a grand party for my son tomorrow. He is returning after a long time. I need to look my best. I want a hairstyle that will make me shine at the party. She said, Yes, my queen. I will make sure to get it right this time around. The following day, the party was all set before Prince Gerald arrival. There were plenty of food and drinks, and the villagers had gathered in the palace compound, eagerly waiting for the prince to arrive. Amarachi had tidied up the prince's room nicely and then returned to the party ground. A few minutes later, a group of flashy cars drove into the palace and stopped at a corner. The guard, who had gone to pick up the prince from the airport, got out of the car and opened the car door. Prince Gerald stepped out from the car, and the villagers shouted and cheered, giving him Igbo names. Ezenwa, Okenna. They chanted. Ezenwa in Igbo land means king. Okenna also means son of wealth. King Ebenezer and Queen Adeze smiled happily when they saw their son. My son is back, King Ebenezer said, beaming with pride. Yes, I am happy, Queen Adeze replied. They sat on their royal chairs, facing the crowd. Prince Gerald waved his hand on the air, greeting his people. The crowd continued to hail him, and the guards protected Prince Gerald from the crowd, giving him space to pass through. Make way for the prince, one of the guards shouted. Eventually, Prince Gerald made his way to the front and knelt before his parents, who blessed him. May your days always be long. King Ebenezer, who placed his hand on his son's head. May the gods protect and guide you. Prince Gerald then stood up after the prayers, and he made a speech to the people. I am happy to be back home after so many years. I have missed you all so much. I'm also proud to say I have graduated with a degree in medicine and surgery. The villagers cheered and clapped for him. I promise to use my knowledge to help our community. I will work hard to build a good hospital here so we can have modern health care. No more relying on herbs or midwives for medical care. We will have trained doctors and nurses to take care of us, Prince Gerald said. The villagers cheered him, excited about the prospect of having a modern hospital in their community. I also plan to create job opportunities for our young people. I want to see our community grow and prosper. We will work together to make this happen, Prince Gerald said and sat down. The villagers erupted with cheers, hailing the prince. Then King Ebenezer stood up and said, My people, today is a happy day. My son, Prince Gerald, is back home, safe and sound. Let us celebrate. The villagers cheered once more. Eat and drink as much as you want. Let us rejoice together. The maize and Amarachi served food and drink to the villagers. Everyone ate and danced together. In the evening, the party came to an end. The villagers went home. Prince Gerald, King Ebenezer, and Queen Adeze went to their rooms to rest. The maize and Amarachi swept the compound and tidied up everywhere before going to their rooms. The following morning, Prince Gerald woke up late at 8 a.m. He stretched his arm and got out of the bed, still feeling a bit tired from his journey the day before. After having a bath and dressing up, he went to the dining room to have breakfast. When he arrived in the dining room, he saw his parents seated down. Good morning, Dad. Good morning, Mom. He greeted. King Ebenezer and the Queen replied, Good morning, son. You are 10 minutes late for your breakfast. Prince Gerald laughed and sat on to eat. After breakfast, King Ebenezer stood and announced, I am leaving to see King of Umunak village. All right, my king, safe trip, the Queen said. Have a safe trip, Dad, Prince Gerald also echoed. King Ebenezer waved goodbye and left. Prince Gerald and Queen Adeze went to the sitting room and sat on the sofa chair. They started discussing where to build the hospital in the village. Your father has a piece of land beside a primary school. We can build the hospital there, Queen Adeze said. That sounds like a good idea, Mom. I would also like to work on the roads in the village. They are in bad condition and have a lot of potholes. Queen Adeze was happy with his suggestion. You are just like your father, my son. Your father will be happy to hear this. Not only are you building a hospital and providing jobs, but you are also going to construct the road. Then Amarachi walked in and bowed her head in greeting. Good morning, my queen. Good morning, my prince. Prince Gerald, who had been concentrating on Amarachi, stammered and replied, good morning. But Queen Adeze did not respond to Amarachi's greeting. Amarachi started to walk away, but Queen Adeze called her back. Amarachi bowed her head again and waited for the instruction. Have you tidied up all the rooms? Queen Adeze asked. Yes, my queen. What about my son's room? Did you tidy it nicely? Yes, my queen, she replied. Queen Adeze then asked, you know you are a local girl. Did you spray air freshener in every room? Yes, my queen. Leave my presence now. Amarachi quickly bowed her head and hurried away. Prince Gerald looked at his mother. Mom, that was harsh, he said. That is not harsh, my son. That girl is local, and I don't like her. I don't know why she came here in the first place, she replied. But Mom, aren't you the one who brought her here to work in the palace? He asked. No, I am not the one. Over my dead body, I will not hire such a local girl to work in my home. It was your father who did. Seriously? Yes, she replied. Prince Gerald whistled softly. Wow, she doesn't look bad though. Queen Adeze looked at him with a suspicious gaze. What do you mean by that? He asked. Prince Gerald replied mischievously. I mean, she's beautiful, he replied. Queen Adeze's face turned stern. You must be crazy. That local girl is beautiful. What makes her beautiful? And let me warn you, I noticed the way you stared at her immediately she walked into the sitting room. I hope you are not developing feelings for her because I won't tolerate that. She's a local girl and not good enough for you. Your father and I want a good, beautiful woman for you, not a maid, because that is not your standard. Remember, you are a prince, she cautioned. Prince Gerald laughed and teased his mother. Stop, Mom. It's not something you should take seriously. I was only complimenting her beauty, nothing else. Let's go back to our discussion. They continued discussing their plan for the village, focusing on the hospital and road construction. In the afternoon, Prince Gerald headed out to check on the site which he planned to build the hospital. As he walked through the corridor, he accidentally collided with Amarachi. Amarachi quickly removed her gaps from Prince Gerald's arm. My prince, I'm sorry, she replied. Prince Gerald smiled. That is not a problem. Are you okay? Yes, I'm fine, my prince. Prince Gerald corrected her. I am Gerald. Prince Gerald, Amarachi replied. Prince Gerald laughed and asked, whatever you call it, but I am Gerald. So what about you? My name is Amarachi. Wow, a nice name. Suddenly, Queen Adeze's voice echoed from the sitting room. Gerald, come on, let's go. What is keeping you so long? Prince Gerald excused himself. Amarachi, we will see later. He smiled at Amarachi and walked away. They left the palace and drove to the site. 30 minutes later, they arrived and got out of the car. Queen Adeze and Prince Gerald walked to the site, discussing the plans for the hospital. Queen Adeze looked around, taking in the layout of the land. This is a good spot, but is it big enough for the hospital? She asked. Yes, Mom, it's quite large. We can build a big hospital here, with plenty of rooms and facilities. Good, I'm glad you have found a suitable site. Let's get started on this plan as soon as possible, the Queen said. I will get the architect to draw up the designs tomorrow. Mom, that's good. Let's go back to the palace. All right. They walked over to the car. The guards opened the car door for them. They hopped in and drove back to the palace. King Ebenezer returned from his journey to Umunna village that evening. After freshening up and having dinner, he sat with his wife and son in the sitting room, discussing the site of the hospital. Have you seen the land? Yes, Dad. Mom showed it to me. It is okay for me to build a hospital. It is very, very perfect. Suddenly, Queen Adeze interrupted the conversation. My son, you didn't come back to the village just for this. Remember our agreement. Prince Gerald looked puzzled. What agreement? About getting married. Your father and I are getting old, and we need to see our grandchildren before we die. The elders also called a meeting last week, saying that after your arrival, you should get a wife soon. Your father is old and should hand over the throne to a younger, more resilient brain, Queen Adeze responded. We also want to see you settle down with a good wife, someone who will take care of you and our kingdom. King Ebenezer also echoed with the wife. Prince Gerald, who had been quiet, then spoke up. Why the rush? I just arrived yesterday. Because it is needed. My son, we are not rushing you. We are just informing you so that you can start looking for a partner. The king intervened. But Queen Adeze cut in. And besides, we have someone in mind. A perfect match. Who? The prince asked. The daughter of Onowu, Queen replied, and then turned to the king. Right? Yes, my son. She's a great choice. She's educated. Her parents have trained her to be responsible. Prince Gerald thought for a moment before responding. Okay, Mom, I will have to see her then. Good. Adama, the daughter of Onowu, was a humble girl. Despite her parents' wealth, she was kind to everyone. She was well educated, having attended University of Nsukka and studied business administration. She had a lovely smile and smooth light skin that glowed beautifully. The following day, in the morning, Queen Adeze visited Mrs. Ifoma, the wife of Onowu. Mrs. Ifoma was her good friend and advisor. Queen Adeze arrived at the Onowu house, and her car stopped at the garage. Her two maids stepped out of the back seat, and one of them opened the car door for her. Queen Adeze stepped out of the car and headed to the house, following by her maid. The driver waited in the car. Queen Adeze got to the veranda and knocked. When Mrs. Ifoma met the queen, she smiled and said, "Oh, my queen, what brings you to my home today?" "I came to see your daughter, Adamma," Queen Adeze replied. "My daughter has gone shopping for new clothes," Mrs. Ifoma said. "That's okay. I will wait. But actually, that is not the main reason I came. My son wants to see your daughter." "Really? That is a wonderful news. I am so happy to hear that," Mrs. Ifoma replied. "But there is something else I want to talk to you about." "What is it?" "There's a girl, no, a maid that my husband brought home," Queen Adeze replied. Mrs. Ifoma interrupted. "But why will the king bring a maid instead of you bringing the maid? You are the one who usually brings the maid." "Yes, that is why I'm scared. I don't know why he brought her in," Queen replied. "But did he give a reason for bringing her in and hiring her as a maid?" "Yes. He said he saw her on the way sitting down helplessly and crying. Her aunt chased her out and the rest. I don't just understand. He must have picked her up on the street. She's surely a prostitute," Mrs. Ifoma interrupted. Queen was speechless for a moment, and then she said, "That's why when I was against her, he shouted at me." "Yes," Mrs. Ifoma affirmed. "Ifoma, you are right. Ever since the first day my husband brought this girl in, I have had this instinct that something fishy is going on." "Yes, something fishy is going on. You can't trust these small girls of nowadays. They like taking what doesn't belong to them." The queen began shaking. "Ifoma, I'm scared now. She would like to take over me and become the second wife, and I don't want any lady to drag my husband with me. What will I do now? You are the first and second and the last, my queen. The king won't get another woman, not even a harlot he brings to the palace," Mrs. Ifoma assured her. "But she's young and beautiful." "No, my queen, she can't get married to the king," Mrs. Ifoma replied. "I want the girl to go. What can I do?" "She will go on her own if all works are overloaded. But first, what duties did you assign to her?" "Tidying up the house," Queen Adeze replied. "Just tidying up the house? No, nah, that's not enough. You should add more duties to her workload so that it gets overwhelmed and she will live on her own." "Okay. Besides, it is not a good idea to send her away yourself. The king will argue with you and accuse you of having hatred for her," Mrs. Ifoma said. "I will do as you say. My queen, you should act fast before the girl ruins a peaceful royal home. Not only will she have an affair with the king, but also with the prince," Mrs. Ifoma warned. Queen Adeze's eye widened in shock as she recalled how Prince Gerald had complimented Amarachi. "Oh no, that's impossible. It's going to be possible if you don't act quickly, my queen. Assign her more duties and make sure she's always busy." Don't give her any chance to seduce the king or the prince, Mrs. Ifoma said. Suddenly, the door swung open and beautiful Adama entered the sitting room, holding shopping mall bags. Immediately she saw the queen. She bowed and greeted. "Good morning, my queen." Queen Adeze answered her greeting cheerfully. "Good morning, my dear. Wow, you are such a beautiful lady. You are indeed a true gem." "Thank you, my queen. You know what? My son, Prince Gerald, is willing to see you, and with such beauty, he will be enticed to you," Queen Adeze replied. Adama smiled shyly and replied, "I am honored, my queen." Queen Adeze admired her even more. "You got the beauty from your mom, Ifoma. You are truly blessed with a beautiful daughter." Mrs. Ifoma smiled proudly, happy to see her daughter receiving such praise from the queen. Queen Adeze then joked, "Adama, I hear you are very clever. Can you tell me what's the best way to keep a man happy?" she asked. Adama laughed and replied, "My queen, I think it's by cooking his favorite meal." "Ah, you are a clever one," Queen Adeze teased. They all laughed together, enjoying the light-hearted moment. Then Adeze excused herself. "My queen, please excuse me. I need to go to my room and freshen up." "All right, you can go." Adama walked away and climbed the staircase. Queen Adeze kept gazing at her and admiring her beauty. Then she turned to Mrs. Ifoma and said, "Wow, Ifoma, your daughter is indeed beautiful. I would like her to join me in the palace to see the prince." Mrs. Ifoma was shocked and asked, "So fast?" "Yes, so that devil is already getting my son's attention, and I don't want it." "You are serious, so my queen." Mrs. Ifoma. "Yes, yesterday my son and I were discussing something when she walked into the sitting room. He lost concentration and stared at her. When she left, he complimented her beauty. I want my son to see your daughter as soon as possible and get to know her." "All right then, let me go and let her know you are waiting for her. And make sure she dresses in a nice outfit for sure," Mrs. Ifoma replied, then climbed the stairs to Adama's room. As soon as Mrs. Ifoma was out of sight, Queen Adeze muttered to herself, "Now let me see how she will be able to lure my son. She has been picked up from the street after all. What does she think she can offer him? Does she think the other way she tried luring other guys and even tried luring my husband to bring her to the palace will work on my son? Ha! I think not. I will make sure she suffers. I will give her all the dirty clothes, make her clean the toilets and serve meals. I will deny her good food, make her eat leftover. I will take away her privileges and make her work instead of resting. I will separate her from the other maidens, make her feel lonely and unwanted. I will maltreat her until the extent that she will have to leave my house. She will never be able to replace me as the second queen. I am the crown queen for now, and soon my daughter-in-law will take over the throne, not some street girl like her." Mrs. Ifoma knocked and entered the daughter's room. "Mom, any problem?" "No problem at all. The queen wants to take you along to the palace to see the prince." "So fast?" "My daughter, that is not fast though. She wants you to get along with the prince," Mrs. Ifoma replied. "Okay, Mom, let me dress up. All right, let me be going. Please, come to the sitting room quickly," Mrs. Ifoma said and left the room. A few minutes later, Adama finished bathing and got dressed. She was dressed in a stunning long emerald green gown that hugged her figure. The gown was embellished with glittering beads, making her look like a princess. She completed her look with a golden chains and earring. Her high heel shoes enhanced her stature and beauty. She grabbed her purse and applied some light makeup. After checking herself in the mirror, she left her room. "Wow, you look stunning," the queen exclaimed. "Thank you, my queen. It is time for us to get going." "Okay, my queen. Enjoy yourself," Mrs. Ifoma waved at them. "I will, Mom. Remember, you are representing our family." "I won't disappoint you, Mom," Adama replied. Mrs. Ifoma closed the door behind them as they left. Queen Adeze and Adama drove into the palace. Meanwhile, in the sitting room, Prince Gerald and Amarachi were discussing together. "So, Amarachi, tell me, what level of education did you complete?" Prince Gerald asked. "My prince, I stopped at SS1. "Seriously? Why did you end your education?" "My parents passed away when I was 15 years, and I lived with my aunt. She was unable to further my education." Suddenly, Queen Adeze entered the sitting room with Adama. Queen Adeze was furious to see Amarachi chatting with the prince. She stared at them and shouted at Amarachi, "What are you doing with my son?" "Oh, Mom, you are back already. We are just discussing," Prince Gerald said. "Discussing, huh? What could you be possibly discussing with a maid?" Queen Adeze asked. "Mom, don't jump to conclusions. We were discussing," Prince Gerald replied. Queen Adeze interrupted him. "And if you want to discuss with a maid, why choose her? Don't you see the other maids I have hired? They are well educated and come from respectable families. I pay them a huge salary. Why not discuss with any of them instead of her? There are many maids in the palace. Why her? She is just a commoner and have unknown background or family. Why her? She was picked up from the street and brought here to work. She is fortunate to have a job in the palace and you shouldn't be associating with her. But Mom, she just told me that she's an orphan and has an aunt. Her aunt is of no use. What matters is her background and her parents," Queen Adeze retorted. Prince Gerald tried to explain. "Mom, we are just discussing. I was interested in learning about her educational background. What business do you know about her background and education? After all, she's a maid who was picked up from the street and brought here," Queen Adeze interrupted. Prince Gerald was furious. "But Mom, I was only asking about her education, nothing else." Queen Adeze interrupted him. "You have no right to talk to a maid. You are a prince and you should conduct yourself in such manner. You should be interacting with people of your social standard, not with maid, not just a maid, but a commoner." "But Mom, please don't rain insult on her. She is not to be blamed. I was the one who called her." Queen Adeze shouted, "Enough! I don't want to hear any more word from you. Look at you. You have no shame in you to stand here and discuss with a commoner. What would your father say or elders say if they catch you discussing with a maid?" Queen Adeze yelled and turned to face Amarachi. "And you are trying to seduce my son, right?" "No, my queen, Amarachi replied, stammering. Queen Adeze interrupted. "Enough, don't say another word. Just leave, get out." Amarachi quickly left the sitting room. After Amarachi had left, Queen Adeze turned to Adamma, who had been standing at a corner, watching the entire scene. She shook her head and introduced herself to Prince Gerald. "Son, this is the daughter of Onowu. She's the one your father and I told you about." Prince Gerald picked up interest on Adamma and turned to her. "Oh wow, nice meeting you," he said, extending a handshake. Adamma shook his hand and replied, "Thank you, my prince. I'm Adamma, and you?" Prince Gerald was stunned by Adamma's boldness in asking about his name. He smiled, inwardly impressed by her confidence. "I'm Gerald. Prince Gerald, you are highly respected," Adamma began to say. "And you too," Prince Gerald replied, completing her sentence. Queen Adeze watched the exchange between Prince and Adamma. A big smile spread across her face. Oh my, why am I even standing here? I will leave you two to get acquainted." "Okay, Mom, take care of her, please," Queen instructed. "I will surely do that." Queen Adeze turned and walked away. Prince Gerald and Adamma were left alone. Prince Gerald smiled at Adamma and asked, "Shall we go to the garden?" "Yes," Adamma replied. Prince Gerald took Adamma's hand and they walked out of the sitting room together. Prince and Adamma walked into the garden. They sat down on the iron chairs and discussed. Prince Gerald discovered that Adamma was simple and endearing. They began to discuss themselves, sharing stories about their lives and interests. "I studied medicine, and you?" Prince Gerald asked. "My prince, I studied business administration." "Wow, that's amazing. You know I'm planning to build a hospital of my own," Prince Gerald replied. "Yes, they announced it that day you arrived." "All right, when I build the hospital, I plan to employ other doctors to work alongside with me." "What?" Adamma asked. "Yes, of course," Prince Gerald replied. "That's so wonderful. I love the way you are humble and willing to work hard despite being a prince." "Why do you say that?" "Because most princes wouldn't dream of working in a company they built or inherited. They will say they are too loyal to work and their education would go to waste," Adamma replied. Prince Gerald smiled and gazed at her. "I'm different." Adamma smiled back at him. "I love that about you. And despite my father being the Onowu of our community and being wealthy, I am kind to everyone. If I had studied medicine, I would have applied to work in your hospital," she replied. "I think you have made a great doctor. Prince Gerald joked. A maid walked up to them with a tray. She set the tray down on the table and arranged 2 glasses of chilled pineapple juice. My prince, the queen sent me to bring you some refreshment, the maid said. Oh, mom is something else. She knows we need chilled juices to enjoy our discussion. And they both laughed. The maid bowed and walked away. Inside the palace, Queen Adeze stood up from the sofa chair and paced back and forth in the sitting room. The words of Mrs. Ifoma echoed in her mind. He must have picked her up from the street. She's surely a prostitute. Just tidying up the house is not enough. You should add more duties to her workload. So she gets overwhelmed and decides to live on her own. My queen, you should act fast before the girl ruins the peaceful royal home. Not only will she have an affair with the king, but also with the prince. No way. She can't have an affair with my husband and my son. No way. I need to act fast, just the way Ifoma warned me. I should act fast or the unknown will happen, Queen Adeze muttered. Queen Adeze stormed out of the sitting room. Where is that foolish girl, Amarachi? Amarachi! Amarachi! She screamed, but there was no answer. Queen Adeze's anger intensified as she stormed to the boys' quarter and went to the maid's room. She opened the first room and saw Amarachi sitting on the bed reading a book. Queen Adeze grew very angry that she was reading instead of working. Hey you, what are you doing here? Don't you think you have chores to do? My queen, I have no more house chores to do now. I'm done tidying up the whole rooms, Amarachi replied calmly. Have you washed the plates, prepared lunch, done the laundry, ironed clothes, and disposed of the waste bin? Queen Adeze asked. Amarachi shook her head. No, but my queen, that's not my duty. My queen, my duty is to tidy the room, she responded. You must be crazy. I believe you don't know yet. Let me make this clear to you. You will have to wash plates, prepare meals and serve, do the laundry, dispose the waste bin, tidy all the room, water the plants and flower, and take care of the garden, Queen Adeze replied. But my queen, those aren't my duties. You assigned me to clean all the rooms, Amarachi replied. Queen Adeze's voice rose in anger. Will you shut up? Yes, I did assign you to clean all the rooms, but now it is changed. Follow all the duties I assign you to do from today henceforth. If you fail to do that, you'll be sacked. Do you want to be sacked? No, my queen, Amarachi replied. Then you shouldn't in any way question me of the duties I assign to you. You will do as I say, and that is final. Okay, my queen, Amarachi replied. Good. Now drop that book you are reading and get off that bed and go and prepare lunch. After that, you serve the lunch and do other work, Queen Adeze said, then walked out of the room before Amarachi could say a word. Amarachi placed the book on the drawer, stood up from the bed and headed to the kitchen. She got to the kitchen and the chef Tina and the assistant chef Machi and Chinasa, who had been waiting for her, walked towards her immediately she entered. Good afternoon to you all, Amarachi greeted. Tina interrupted. Hold on to your greeting. We don't need it. The queen has informed us that you'll be taking my position to cook for the meantime. Amarachi replied, yes, but mistakenly interrupted Tina. And who gave you the audacity to interrupt me when I'm not done talking? Tina replied. She has no fear in her. She thinks being assigned to cook, she will use her cooking skills to win the royal family heart. Chinaza chimed in. Tina turned to Amarachi. I asked you a question and you haven't replied. Who gave you the audacity to interrupt me when I'm not done talking? She said. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. Just shut up, you local girl. You think we don't know you were picked up on the street and brought to the palace? We all heard the discussion you had with the queen and the prince a few minutes ago in the sitting room. Even your discussion with the prince. You are not even qualified to work here in the first place. You are just lucky, Machi sneered. What did I do to you girls to receive such insult? Amarachi asked. What you actually did to us, you wretched girl. You can't make us sad because we are more special than you. You are just a trash in this palace, Tina retorted. Machi and Chinasa burst into laughter. Amarachi gasped. Well, as a mermaid, which you are, and have been assigned to cook, make sure you prepare the meals well. Don't try to cook rubbish, Tina warned. But I won't cook rubbish. I can cook very well, Amarachi said. Oh no, Our professional cook is talking. Let's accord her with respect, Chinasa sneered. Machi burst into laughter. You think it's those local dishes you prepare at your home that you prepare here for the royal family? Let me tell you, it's new recipe. Can you prepare fried rice and grilled chicken? Tina asked and eyed Amarachi. Yes, Amarachi replied. Tina, Chinasa and Machi laughed hard. You are scared and I can see it. You are trying to admit you can cook, but you can't. Listen, I don't want to hear the royal family complain. In fact, we will keep an eye on you. We will all cook together, Tina said. Chinasa interrupted. Tina, have you just forgotten what the queen said? No one should assist her. She will have to cook all alone. Oh no, I just remembered. And thank you for reminding me before this good-for-nothing girl ruins my job when the queen eventually finds out that I assisted her in the kitchen, Tina said to Chinaza, then turned to face Amarachi. Listen, girl, as you have heard, the queen has made it official that no one will assist you in the kitchen. You will have to prepare all the ingredients yourself, set the table yourself, and wash the dishes yourself after cooking. Make sure that there is no single speck of dirt in the counter or even in the sink after cooking. Do you understand? Tina warned. Yes, Amarachi replied. Good, girls. Let's go and leave her to start her work, Tina said. Wait, Machi said. What is it? Tina asked. Machi drew Tina and Chinasa closer and whispered, remember what she told the prince, that she only completed her education at SS1. They began laughing. Amachi looked surprised and wondered why they were laughing. Tina, Machi and Chinasa turned to her. We forgot to ask you, what level of education did you complete? Tina asked. Why ask? It is not important to know, Amarachi replied, looking down. Ow, she's already ashamed. She wants to cry. Well, you think we don't know that you didn't even complete your secondary school education. You stopped at SS1, Machi said. And how sure are we she even attended a secondary school? Maybe she stopped at basic 6. Probably she lied to the prince, Tina replied. I'm telling the truth, Amarachi defended. Whatever, Tina sneered. Look, Amarachi, or whatever your name is. Don't feel too proud just because you are allowed to cook for the king, the queen, and the prince, because they won't enjoy your meat the way they do ours. Tina is a professional chef, which you are not. She studied cooking at a prestigious university, which you didn't. She's a qualified cook, and you are not. You can't compete with her because she knows when to add the right ingredient. We are all trained chefs. We hold diplomas, Chinasa said. If you all graduated as chef, why don't you go to the city and find good jobs as chefs instead of working here? Amarachi asked. Who do you think you are, girl? Is it because you were brought to the palace by the king that you don't know what a palace is and the benefits of working here as chefs? We are highly paid and we are respected as professional chefs, not just mermaids like you, Tina said. You are lucky to be working in the palace. As we have said before, if not for the king, who are you to the queen that she would appoint you as a maid? You don't meet her standard. Don't you see that the other maids working in the palace hold university degrees and come from reputable families, unlike you, who, where, let's just say you didn't even complete your secondary school education, Chinasa said. Machi interrupted her. She stop wasting your breath on this girl. Let's go, as we have free time. Let's go, Tina replied, and they walked away. When they left, Amarachi left out a sign of relief. She opened the fridge and scanned the content. She pulled out the chicken and refrigerated steamed tomato. Then closed the fridge. She began preparing chicken stew and rice. She opened the cupboard and there were a lot of sachet spices, but she selected the grounded natural spice to add flavor to the stew. Once the stew was ready, she served lunch on the dining table. While serving lunch, Amarachi noticed Tina and Chinasa standing at a corner, their face clearly mocking her. In the sitting room, Queen Adeze was having her nails done by her maids. Then Prince Gerald and Adama entered the sitting room smiling and holding hands. Queen Adeze quickly dismissed her maid. Then she turned to her son and Adama. Wow, I see you both have a good time together in the garden. Yes, Mom, we did. We got to know each other and played a game of chess, Prince Gerald replied. Wow, that's great to hear, Queen Adeze said. My queen, I will get going now, Adama said. Wow, so fast. I thought you would stay until evening and your soon-to-be husband and guard will drop you off at home. Yes, Mom, that's what I was trying to tell her, but she refused listening to me. My dear, You don't have to argue with your husband. Please come sit. Lunch is almost here, and we'll have lunch together, Queen Adeze pleaded. Adama sat down on the sofa and Prince Gerald sat beside her. Suddenly, the front door opened and King Ebenezer entered the sitting room, having just finished a meeting with the elders in the throne room. As soon as he stepped into the sitting room, Adama greeted him. "Good afternoon, my king," standing up. "Good afternoon, my daughter. Are you just arriving?" King Ebenezer asked. "No, Dad. She arrived at 12 noon, but you were with the elders." "All right, you are highly welcome, my daughter." "Thank you, my king." King Ebenezer extended a handshake and Adama took it. Then Amarachi walked into the sitting room, stepping down the 2 stairs from the room area to the sitting room. "My king, my queen, my prince, lunch is ready," Amarachi announced. "I'm famished. Let's go and eat." "All right." They stood up and walked to the dining room. Amarachi stood at a corner beside Machi and Tina while the royal family ate. Prince Gerald was the first to taste the meal, and it was delicious. This meal is absolutely delicious," he said. Adama quickly took her spoon and tasted the food as well. "Wow, indeed it is. Who prepared the meal?" she asked. Amarachi was about to speak up, but Queen Adeze gave her a stern glance and silenced her. "My dear, why are you curious about who prepared the meal?" Adeze asked. "My queen, it is because the food is exceptionally delicious," Adama replied. "Yes, Mom, it is truly," Prince Gerald said, then turned to Tina, Machi, and Amarachi. "So which one of you prepared this wonderful meal?" "My prince, it is, Tina stammered. Prince Gerald encouraged her to speak. "Yes, speak, who prepared the meal?" Queen Adeze intervened. "My son, why are you so interested in who prepared the meal? Let's just enjoy our lunch. The person who prepared the meal is not important to be mentioned at this moment. Let's eat." "All right, Mom." They began eating. Suddenly, Queen Adeze started coughing violently. Amarachi, Tina, and Machi were frightened, as were the prince, king, and Adama. "Are you all right, my queen?" King Ebenezer exclaimed. "Mom, are you okay?" "My queen, please speak up," Adama pleaded. Queen Adeze struggled to speak. "Water, I am choking." Adama quickly grabbed the water jug and poured water into a glass cup. She handed the cup to Queen Adeze, who drank the water. Queen Adeze finished drinking the water and placed the cup on the table. She stood up and rushed to Amarachi and grabbed her neck. "Do you want to kill me? Why did you have excess amount of pepper on the stew? Don't you know that I can die instantly from the shock? You wicked girl, so you want to kill me?" Queen Adeze shouted at Amarachi. Prince Gerald and Adama exchanged surprised glances. They were shocked that the queen was yelling at Amarachi, as the stew was not properly peppery, but rather perfectly seasoned. King Ebenezer hastily approached the queen. "Please, my queen, you are grasping her neck so much. Do you want to suffocate her?" "What if she has suffocated me? I don't care if she dies. She attempted to kill me at where? Didn't you notice how excessive peppery this stew was?" Queen Adeze retorted. "My queen, but the stew isn't peppery at all." Adama intervened. "Are you sure it isn't?" Queen Adeze asked. "Yes, my queen. There is no excess pepper in it." "It is, my dear. She must have added a huge amount of pepper to mine. That is why yours tastes different." The girl needs to learn. She intended to harm me, Queen Adeze shouted, her eyes blazing with anger. "Do you want to kill me?" Adeze continued. Tina and Machi witnessed the scene. They exchanged amused glances and laughed softly. Chinasa entered the dining room and was astonished. "What happened? Why is the queen holding Amarachi's neck so tightly?" she asked. "The queen claims the stew is excessively peppery and accuses Amarachi of trying to harm her," Tina replied. "Mom, please release her. We must resolve this matter calmly, not through violence." Prince Gerald intervened. "So, how can the stew be peppery when Prince Gerald denies it?" Chinasa inquired. "We can't trust a stranger from the street. She is evil," Tina responded. "If the king knew her true nature, he wouldn't have brought her into the palace," Machi said. King Ebenezer turned to Tina, Machi, and Chinasa. "Leave us immediately," he commanded. The three girls hastily departed. Prince Gerald continued to plead with his mother. "Mom, please, don't harm her. She's innocent." Queen Adeze released Amarachi and they all proceeded to the sitting room. King Ebenezer, Queen Adeze, Prince Gerald, and Adama seated themselves on the sofa chair. while Amarachi stood before them, her head bowed. Amarachi, did I make a mistake by bringing you to the palace? Your aunt had informed me of your refusal to acquire a skill, so as to make ends meet for your future and your disobedience towards her and her husband. She pleaded with me to bring you to the palace, and I pitied her, which led me to bring you here. Did I commit a mistake by bringing you to my home? King Ebenezer inquired. Queen Adeze interrupted. So you brought a disobedient girl into our home. She refused to acquire a skill to support herself in the future. Yet she readily accepted coming to the palace. Woman, let us focus on the matter at hand, rather than assigning blame. Moreover, I brought her here because she was brutally beaten and thrown out from her home that day. That was the sole reason I brought her to the palace, King Ebenezer said. So because she was beaten and thrown out, that is why you brought her to our home. I fear that your kindness may ultimately lead to your demise, Queen Adeze retorted. Mom, please allow Dad to finish speaking. But I am trying to correct your father's mistake in bringing this disobedient and uneducated girl into our home to serve as a maid. Can't you see how he has put our lives at risk? Queen Adeze asked. King Ebenezer gave his wife a stern glance. Woman, please be quiet and let me finish speaking, he said. Queen Adeze kept silent. King Ebenezer turned to Amarachi. Amarachi, why did you intend to harm my wife? He asked. My king, I didn't intend to harm anybody, Amarachi replied. Queen Adeze stood up, her finger pointed accusingly at Amarachi. Then, you want to say I am lying, right? She asked. Adama quickly stood up and gently grabbed the queen's arm. Please, with her calm voice, please, my queen, sit down. Queen Adeze calmly sat down and said, just look at how this worthless girl wants to tarnish my image. My child, please tell me the truth. I won't punish you, King Ebenezer said to Amarachi. Amarachi knelt on the ground. I'm telling you, my king, please. She's faking tears to look innocent, but deep down she's not. Queen Adeze scoffed. Then she stood up and shouted at Amarachi. Enough of this pretense. Tell me the truth. My queen, I didn't add excessive pepper to your stew. I can never try such. So you are trying to tell me that I am lying against you. She turned and climbed the stair, heading to her room. After Queen Adeze stormed out, Amarachi crawled to King Ebenezer and pleaded with him. I am innocent, my king. I didn't add pepper to the stew. I didn't intend to harm her. Stop crying, my child. It is okay. I believe you. Despite having no proof, you may go now, King Ebenezer said. Amarachi thanked the king, Prince and Adama, then stood up and left the sitting room. Adama stood up and announced, I'm taking my leave, my king. All right, thank you. Greet your parents for me. I will, my king. Prince Gerald stood up. Let me drop you off. Thank you, my prince, she said, and they both walked out. King Ebenezer went to the room where the wife was, and she was pacing. Why didn't you punish the maid? Queen Adeze asked. King Ebenezer kept mute. Didn't you realize what she did to me? I choked and would have died instantly. I don't understand what you are talking about, King Ebenezer struggled. What don't you understand? After what I went through just hours ago, you should have sent that girl away for goodness sake. Can't you see that she tried to kill me? Queen Adeze yelled. All this ranting won't make me throw the poor girl out. Why are you being so heartless, Adeze? King Ebenezer asked. Me, heartless? Queen Adeze asked. Yes, you are heartless. You tried to blackmail that girl. She prepared a wonderful meal, and you claim it was too peppery. So, you admit her meal is nice, Queen Adeze asked. Yes, her meal is delicious. I didn't see anything wrong with how she prepared it. If she hadn't cooked well, you would say she prepared trash. Now she has. You still accuse her. What do you want from that girl exactly? King Ebenezer asked. I want her to leave, Queen Adeze shouted.